Welcome to Hire Power, the show where we cut through the noise and get real about hiring. I'm Kim Frost, founder of Frost Connections, and after 25 plus years in the search industry, I've seen what works and what absolutely doesn't. If you're a founder, CEO, VP, or HR leader who's tired of bad hires and ready to build a team that actually fits your culture and vision, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hi there, welcome back. Today I want to talk about a question I'm getting more and more of behind closed doors, in boardrooms, from CEOs, and honestly from exhausted leaders who are trying to keep up. The question is, Kim, how are we supposed to learn in an era of AI? In fact, I was just interviewed by 425 magazine about this very thing because it feels like AI is everywhere, in everything, all at once. And yes, it's incredible, but I need to say something up front that might ruffle some feathers. And I really want you to think about this. AI definitely increases output, but development transforms identity. Think about this. How do you learn if you don't go through the process of learning, the trials and tribulations? We can't get everything right all the time the first time. But guess what? That's exactly how we learn. It's like finishing school and moving right into a CEO role of a global company. Okay, really any size with people. Are you going to be successful? Are you set up for success? The answer is obvious, right? You have to learn the ropes. Output and development, those two things, they are not interchangeable. AI can definitely help you produce more. And this is a whole other conversation because the more you produce, but it cannot automatically make you better, not wiser, not more grounded, not more emotionally intelligent, and not more capable of leading people. And if we're not careful, AI will create the illusion of growth when what we're really doing is generating more activity. So let's get into it. Piggybacking on my last AI episode, I talked about AI in hiring. And one of the key points I made is that AI doesn't remove bias just because it's a technology. AI is still built by humans, deployed by humans, configured by humans, and what you don't design thoughtfully will eventually backfire. And if you think about it, downright scary. Well, the same thing is happening right now with learning, which is mind blowing. AI is making us faster, but speed is not the same thing as maturity, and leadership requires maturity. We can compare AI to manufacturing. So let me ask you it this way. Is AI becoming the manufacturing line of the future, but for thinking? Because that's what it's starting to feel like. Think about this manufacturing, assembly lines increased production, they improved scale, they created consistency, but they also changed the relationship between the worker and the craft. When everything becomes automated, the worker can lose connections to mastery. So here's the uncomfortable question for leaders. Are we building the assembly line of thinking and quietly removing the craft of learning? Bill Gates sure seems to think so. Because learning isn't just about getting information. Learning is trying, failing, reflecting, adjusting, deciding, and my favorite, becoming. AI can hand you information instantly, but it doesn't give you the internal reps required to be a better leader. Let's reflect back on the pandemic. I want to draw a comparison here that every leader listening will understand immediately. We all remember the pandemic. Work changed overnight. And there's one data point that still blows my mind. Meetings increased by about 50% in many workplaces once remote work became the norm. And what happened next? Workloads increased too, not because the work was better, but because people had more time in their day. Initially, research showed that productivity increased, but we know why, right? Most everything was closed. We didn't have anything to do outside our home. We were scared. There was no commuting, there was no hallway chats, no natural stopping point. There really wasn't much else to do. And a lot of people defaulted to let me stay busy so I won't lose my job. But here's the part nobody wants to admit: we weren't always collaborating more. We definitely weren't building more connection, but we were scheduling more. And collaboration, that is actually what builds innovation. And collaboration during the pandemic, you know it, significantly dropped. So we had more activity, but less depth. So pause here, because that's exactly what AI can do if we aren't intentional. More activity, less depth. So is AI creating more activity for us? AI expands volume, definitely gives us more content, more ideas, more drafts, more emails, more analysis, more decks, more output. But here is the real question: are we generating more, but thinking less? Now that I'm talking and saying this, I feel like I'm Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, pondering all her questions out loud. But seriously, let's get back to this. If you're a leader, you need to feel the weight of that, because organizations don't rise based on output alone. They rise based on judgment, the quality of decisions, clarity, and human trust. AI can definitely crank up that production, but judgment, that is what is built through experience. And experience requires time inside the work. Now, here's the learning problem nobody is addressing, and I'll say it plainly. With all the content coming out, we cannot possibly digest it all and learn from it all. It's way too much, way too fast. So, what's happening? Leaders are overwhelmed, employees are overwhelmed. Employees and frankly, leaders, we're getting scared again. Everyone is consuming, but fewer people are really integrating it. And what happens when you consume without integration? Well, definitely you become informed, but you're not transformed. We get smarter on paper, but not stronger in leadership. And this is where I'm going to challenge you all. If AI is feeding your organization constant content, your job as a leader is to protect learning, not just looking at speed. And as I've said this before, please note when I say leader, a leader doesn't, I don't necessarily mean that as you are leading a direct team or you have direct reports or you're managing. You can still be a leader and lead without those direct reports. AI has only been widely adopted for really the last 12 to 18 months. And here's where it matters, because really AI has existed for years, though we didn't always know we were using AI. Think about the when we're typing and we get the word populated next, right? That is essentially AI. But real adoption, it's basically new. The last 12 to 18 months have changed everything. And here's what leaders need to accept: we do not know the long term implications yet. The pandemic, as life changing as it was, well, we eventually faded back into that normal, right? We're socializing again. We're not afraid of dying. But here's with AI, we're not going back to normal. AI is not a chapter, it's the new operating system of our life. So we need a plan that is bigger than, hey, let's train everyone on ChatGPT. No, it's not a tool rollout. This is really becoming a human development issue. And the biggest risk? AI is diminishing learning. So I'm going to say it again directly. AI can diminish learning, not because it's bad, it's not, but because learning requires struggle. Learning requires friction. Learning requires thinking through problems before someone hands you the answer. Learning is sometimes sounding like an idiot. And AI is basically a genius assistant that never gets tired and always has suggestions, which sounds amazing until you realize, God, if employees stop grappling with problems, they stop developing. And if they stop developing, your bench strength collapses. Now, as a leader, you've got output, but you don't have capacity. And capacity is what builds longevity. The new leadership filter. Does this AI task add value? You have to ask yourself that. That's your filter. And I did mention this last week as well in my podcast using AI and hiring. So, the practical question leaders should start asking constantly: does this AI task add value? Not does it save time or not that it's impressive, but true value. And the bigger question is AI unintentionally stripping us of the learning experience that builds empathy, judgment, and resilience? Because those human reps matter. Think of it this way: building muscle strength. How do you do it? You do it by doing those reps. But now AI is making those reps optional. So, how is that building that human muscle of our brain? EQ and SQ are more important than ever. So, let's talk about what AI cannot teach. It can't teach empathy, courage, accountability, humility, influence, trust building, self awareness. Those are all traits that a strong leader needs. That's EQ. And I'm also going to add what you've heard me talk about before was SQ, social intelligence. In a world where we've got 4 generations in the workforce, a global reach, remote team, cultural differences, speed expectations, and then you put AI in the middle of everything, that EQ and SQ aren't nice to haves. They're how you survive as a leader. And I talked about that too in my prior podcast. Empathy is consistently listed among the top leadership traits. And that makes sense because people don't lead companies, they lead leaders. AI can draft you that perfect message, but it cannot read the room. It can't feel tension. It doesn't read body language, and it cannot build trust after betrayal. And empathy, that is learned. It's learned through those hard conversations, through mistakes, through dealing with humans, not just data. Our real challenge, right, is keeping the human in humans. So now we land on the biggest leadership issue in the AI era. We have to design AI enabled systems that still preserve space for human choice, human development. And I want to say this in a way that's super digestible. AI shouldn't replace your thinking, it should elevate it. But if you let it do everything, you lose that pause, you lose that reflection, you lose those moments where leaders actually become leaders, making decisions with incomplete info, weighing trade offs, having that courage, and taking accountability. So here's the real question: will we hand over our agency to machines, or will we use machines to sharpen human leadership? Because you can't outsource authorship. Your culture cannot be sustained by AI. Your strategy can't be sustained by AI. And your values, they cannot be enforced by AI. Eventually, are we going to lose our values because we're leaning into AI too much? Remember, leadership still requires a human owner. So we need to ensure that people keep developing. And how do we do that? So here's a no fluff way of saying this. We need to ensure people don't just produce more, but they actually become more capable. That's the goal. And the simple framework I want you as a leader consider: protecting time, not training, not content, but true learning time. Time where people must think, build, decide, reflect. Yes, that sounds corny, that sounds great, but really make that time and carve that out. Create those human required moments. In your processes, intentionally include moments where AI is not allowed to finish the thought. So, for example, how do we do that? I always say humans must write the first draft. Humans must decide the final answer. Humans must defend the recommendation. And then humans need to justify the trade offs. So, reward judgment, not just output. If you only reward speed, you're going to create shallow leaders. If you reward thinking, you're going to develop strong leaders. We need to train people on discernment. No prompts, discernment. What to trust, what to question, when AI is wrong, when AI is helpful, when AI becomes a crutch. Because in the era of AI, discernment is leadership. So, if you're feeling a little uneasy about AI, you're not alone. AI is definitely powerful. We're all learning. We do not know the long-term impact yet. But if we don't lead it wisely, we're going to create more output, more noise, more activity, and fewer truly capable leaders. And that's the problem. Your job isn't to stop AI. Your job is to make sure people don't stop developing. Because the future of work isn't AI driven alone, it's human led with AI as that accelerator. If you want help thinking through this, specifically how this impacts hiring, leadership capability, and long term bench strength, that's what we do. Again, we don't just fill roles, we build leaders that last. All right, until next time, and I promise it won't be on AI.
That's it for this episode of Hire Power. If you're ready to hire smarter, connect with me at frostconnections.com or at LinkedIn at Kim Frost. And if you've got something to say about today's episode, follow the show and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, hire smart, lead better, and remember, how you hire is who you become. See you next week. No fluff, just better hires.